Hey everyone, we're back. I'm here with the wonderful Teela Cunningham from Every Tuesday. Welcome, Teela.
Hey guys.
I said this yesterday. I do feel a little bit like a kid at Christmas this week because this has been so much fun. I was just geeking out with Teela. We've just jumped off an incredible lettering session with Stefan Kuhns. I'm beyond excited for this one as well. And this whole week is just so value-packed with awesome people. We're loving all the positivity in the comments. And look at how lovely these people are, Teela. Like, they're all just hanging out before we've jumped on.
They're so wonderful.
Best community. So yeah, thank you for being here, everyone. This should be another really, really valuable session. We hope you enjoy it. Teela, what are you going to be teaching us today?
Today we're going to be creating some realistic and beautiful watercolor lettering directly in Procreate 100% on the iPad.
Amazing. Well, enough of my chatter. Should we jump straight into it?
Let's do it. All right, I'm going to switch this around.
Let us know, by the way, if you haven't yet, where you're tuned in live from, just while the iPad is loading. Love to see where everyone's from. Hello from Paris, Laura Elise says. Hey guys, Laurie from Florida. Perfect. Okay, Teela, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. All right,
wonderful.
So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together in this webinar. So first of all, happy Tuesday.
How perfect is it that we had you on Tuesday?
It's so perfect. I know, I had to say
that. And for anyone that doesn't know, what is your young daughter called?
My daughter's name is Tuesday as well.
So this
we
could
take
not
brand
be more
loyalty
perfect.
seriously around here.
Yeah, there's no way we could have had you on a Wednesday. I didn't even think about that.
I know, it's so perfect. So this is, so I created some lettering ahead of time so you can kind of see. I want to show you the details before we start off. So you can see we got watercolor paper texture in the background, which really helps enhance everything and make it really believable. I'm going to move my mic a little closer, so hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you great. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of detail in here. There's different texture going on. It's not very like matchy-matchy, so you have any repetition anywhere. Everything's super unique, and it's consistent too, even though it is unique. So we have all kinds of variation in opacity and texture throughout, and we've got these believable dark edges that you see in real watercolor lettering. So if you looked at this, the whole point and the goal is to trick people that they wouldn't know that this was 100% digitally made. So we've got that.
Edges are drool-worthy, Teela. They're amazing.
They're really fun to put in. They're so easy to do too. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. So just coming around, you can see all the texture. I do want to start off by mentioning that in order to achieve this effect, you do need some watercolor brushes. I'm using my own set of watercolor brushes that I've created for lettering, but I will let you know what a good alternative is with the default brushes in Procreate. So there's no need to go and get my set. You can if you'd like, but you can definitely achieve this with the default brushes in Procreate as well. So I'll just walk you through those brushes, the ones that are a slight comparison to mine as I work through this. So we've got the watercolor paper texture in the background, so you can use any paper texture you'd like. This is my own. This is medium tooth texture. And then we're just going to hop in. So I've got a new document all ready to go. I've already got my lettering all set here so we can focus on implementing all those effects. So this is kind of how it begins. You put your texture on the background, and I've got my layers right here. Can you guys read this? Is this clear enough? I hope.
We can actually. And what I love is this is the perfect lead on from Stefan's session. He literally just showed you guys how to come up with lettering layouts. Now you get to see how to bring them to life and texture them.
Oh, perfect. All right, so we've already got the paper texture, and that's on its own layer in the background. And the way that I brought that into Procreate is you just hit your wrench up here, you hit add, and then insert a photo. And if you even go online and find a watercolor paper texture, you can take a screenshot. That will be saved to your camera roll. So when you go to add and insert a photo, you can grab it straight from your camera roll. So you can grab any watercolor paper texture you'd like. And that part's pretty important because it's what really brings everything to life at the end. So I've got that on my very bottom layer right here. And then on top of that, I've put in my base lettering. So letter anything you would like and keep that on its own layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is reduce the opacity of this because we're using it as a template. It's not going to be a part of our final lettering at all, but we need it to work off of to get all those textures in there. So with our base lettering, there are two ways that you can go about this. I'm going to share my favorite way as well as an alternative way. So the alternative way would be using this base lettering, creating a new layer right on top of it, and then just redrawing each letter individually in a different color. So the way that I prefer it, we're going to be able to copy this exactly. So it's not like hopefully lining up with the edges just perfectly. We're going to copy it perfectly edge to edge. So in order to do that, you're going to tap on your layer's thumbnail and choose select, and that will create a selection of everything that's on this layer. And if I zoom in here, hopefully you can see there's diagonal lines there, and that lets you know that there's an active selection. So let me zoom out. We're going to create a new layer right above our base lettering layer, and we're going to start coloring our individual letters. So these are the colors that I'm using. I will give you their values if you want to use the same colors. So this is the orange color. We've got our HSB, RGB, and the hex number right there. Hopefully you can see those. If not, let me know and I can read them off. And then this is the blue one. For the replay, anyone can just pause and put those in as well. And then here is the green color. So those are the colors that we're going to be using. I'm going to start off with my yellow color, return to my disk, and I'm going to grab my first brush, which is my round paintbrush for lettering. Doesn't really matter what brush you use here. You can use any brush that you'd like. This is just my preference. So I'm going to just come in here, and because it's a selection and I've got my brand new layer right up here, I can paint it in. Oops. I don't think my... connect my...
Oh, don't worry.
You know what? I know why I went into airplane mode, so I wouldn't get any text messages.
Ah, does that not let you connect it properly?
Yeah, because Bluetooth, that's why.
Oh, no way. Right. Okay, so we have to hope that none of your friends call you.
I know. All right, here we go. So you can just paint right on top, and because it's a selection, I can paint past it and it won't go past it. So that's super helpful. So I can just paint in all of my letters now, and I can get the exact outcome that I'm looking for because I have that selection.
Teela, I have to ask, with the lettering, is that something that you lettered on Procreate directly, or did you do it analog and then scan it in? Because those edges look really organic.
Oh, thank you. I did this directly in Procreate using this brush.
Okay.
The same brush that's part of that set, the round paintbrush for lettering.
That's cool. Yeah, it looks like you've done
so
it
gives you
on watercolor paper. Yeah.
Yeah, so I fine-tuned these brushes just to give them that believable look as much as possible.
Nice.
So I alternate my letters, but I don't go like every other one because I want it to look just more random than that. So I'll just paint a few letters randomly. I'm going to go my U next. And we'll do the A.
And remember, everyone watching, please do pop any questions you have in the Ask a Question feature just below this video, because we're going to do some dedicated Q&A at the end. So Teela is here very kindly to answer all and any of your questions.
All right. This is like the longest part. So just
I love this kind of thing. I find it so calming just to watch it.
It's super relaxing to do.
Yeah, I bet.
All right. Almost done.
Do you find with stuff like this, it's almost like I feel so lucky that we get to do this stuff as part of our profession, because it's like what you do as a kid when you're having fun, and we get to do it as adults. That's the best thing in the world.
All right, so we've got all of our letters all in here now. Now we can turn off our template layer. So I'm just going to turn off the visibility of our base lettering right here. And we're going to change the blend mode of our lettering layer, our colored lettering layer, to multiply. And whenever you apply a multiply blend mode, it's mixing whatever is on that layer with the layer beneath it. In this case, it's your watercolor paper texture, and it's blending it in a dark way. So just keep that in mind. And because it's blending in a dark way, let me zoom up here so you can see what happens when we switch it. So tap on the N and choose multiply, and you can see we see that watercolor paper texture poking through all of our letters now, which makes it really believable.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yep. And then we're going to keep our selection active right now. And one of the really cool effects with watercolor lettering is what I'm calling a reduced opacity downstroke. So that sounds a little extreme, but what it essentially means is when you're creating watercolor lettering in real life, your water will generally pool in your downstrokes because it's your thickest stroke, and your water comes in the middle of it and it pushes the color to the edges, which is why you get those dark edges in there. So in order to make this believable, we want to reduce the opacity on our downstrokes. So we want to go wherever there's a thick downstroke. Whenever you're creating your lettering and your hand goes in a downward motion, those are your downstrokes. So we're going to reduce the opacity by just grabbing your eraser, and I'm still using the round paintbrush for lettering for this, and I've got a smaller size right here because I just want to reduce it a little bit. I don't want to go overboard at all. So I'm just going to draw a line, an eraser line. So I'm actually removing the color from these areas. You don't have to do all the downstrokes. I'm not going to for the sake of time, but I'm going to grab a few of them right here just so you can kind of see what that looks like. And then what you want to do is smudge it out. So we are spreading that low opacity throughout the word. So I'm going to grab my smudge tool and I'm going to grab my semi-dry wash right here. If you're using the default brushes, you want to come to water and you want to use either your wet glaze or your wash for this. So I have my semi-dry wash selected, and it's the smudge tool. That part's really important. And you're just going to smudge the erased area. And you can see.
I did not know you could do that.
Yep. So it's reducing the opacity in those areas, which will give you a really nice final effect. If you're not seeing it appear as much as you would like, you're more than welcome to just go back in, erase away again, and then just smudge it out. So it's these little details that really matter when you're creating this effect. And got two more.
We've got Dallas says, I just want to say I love how you explain things in so much detail and share the exact brushes and colors. I learned so much from you.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It's a sweet comment. And Tammy says that downstroke technique is awesome. I'm a huge fan as well.
It's so subtle.
Yeah, I love the subtle details though, because you're right, they really add up.
Yes, totally. The more you implement, it makes it so believable. I actually want to put one on this downstroke because it's so heavy and right in the middle of the word. So we've got this first detail in there, and now this is the fun part. So I teach a few different techniques for creating this effect, and this one is probably the most popular one, which is why I wanted to share it, this alternating color throughout a word. So now we need these colors to bleed into each other. Whenever you're creating watercolor lettering analog, the preceding letter is going to bleed into the next letter. So we want this color to bleed into the following color. You don't want like the blue to go into the orange. We want the orange to go into the blue because that's how it would naturally occur. So we still have our selection active, and we're going to grab a different smudge this time. So the smudge I'm using is this watercolor bleed, and this is what really takes this one to the next level. If you're using the default brushes, you want to use the water bleed one for this. Okay, so I've got the watercolor bleed, and just come in here and you're just going to push. So you can push a few times and you can kind of see if it's going too much or not enough.
Oh, wow.
And what you want to focus on is this line where they meet. You want to make sure that that disappears completely. So you can see that line is totally gone now, and it's bleeding that color right into the next color. And if it's too much, just reduce the size of your brush. I kind of like how this one's looking. The size of my brush is right around 25%. And I'm just going to push, and it's totally fine to go in and push again.
That looks like what happens with real watercolor. That's
yeah,
so
isn't
realistic.
that cool?
All the comments are like, ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
And like for this one, my letter is much shorter with the yellow, so maybe I don't want the green to bleed in that much, so I can reduce the size of it. I'm going to come down to like 17, 18% and just push, and that way I'm not filling up too much of my yellow, but I'm still getting that effect coming through. And then once again, just make sure that you're eliminating that edge where the two meet. So push.
Very cool.
And there we go. So that's pretty fun. And then in order to add even more detail to this, we want to start introducing some texture on top of what we've already done, because at the end of the day, we've got reduced opacity right here, but we don't have a ton of texture within all of our letters. So in order to do that, we still have our selection active this entire time. You can see that up here, this little icon. You want to make sure that that's still selected. And we're just going to grab the texturizer brush. If you're using the default brushes, you want to come into water and you can use the blotch brush, and you're just going to stamp it a bunch of times for this. but this one kind of repeats that same action. So it makes it a little faster. And I just come in with my finger most of the time, and I will tap on it. And hopefully,
oh, that's cool.
Can you see? I can increase.
No, I can. No, it's subtle, but I can see it.
Yeah. See these edges right here? Can you see that?
Yep.
How it looks like there's water there now?
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
I just stamp it around, and you can bring in a lot of texture through all of your letters this way. And you can reduce the size of it, you can increase the size, and just vary it all up. That's a little too much. You can reduce the opacity to make it more subtle if you want.
Your teaching skills are getting an awful lot of love in the comments. We appreciate the kind words, guys. Yeah.
So I just come through here with my texturizer, and then I'll reduce the size of it a bit, and I will actually use my stylus and come in and go along some of the edges, and you can see it naturally is creating those darker edges too. So that helps make the look a lot more believable just by painting with your texturizer brush.
Why is it creating the dark edges and not erasing them as much?
So it's a pixel-based program, and while it works really well, this is actually, I don't want to say it's a glitch in the program, but even Photoshop behaves this way, where it doesn't grab all of your pixels at once. It does its best guess with the artwork and how organic all the shapes are. So it actually leaves like a pixel or two. It's usually a pixel or two off. So we're using it to our advantage.
I love that. Yeah, normally it would be an annoyance where you get that kind of halo effect, but with watercolor, that's exactly what you want.
It's perfect. It's exactly what we need.
That's so cool.
So I like coming up on some of the curves because you'll see that a lot with regular watercolor lettering where the water or the paint on your brush is just starting to leave the brush. So it'll be a little more reduced on those curves. So I always make sure that I hit those curves especially hard with when I'm creating this.
I love that halo. I can't stop looking at it now.
It's so pretty, right?
Yeah, I remember in Photoshop, I'd always have to contract my selection by 1 or 2 pixels to get rid of that.
Exactly. Yep. We're on the same page there. Okay, so I think this is enough. It's really easy to go overboard, but it still looks pretty cool. All right, so from here you can add more texture if you'd like. Sometimes I'll take my watercolor bleed and I'll push up along the edges. You want to start from where there isn't any color at all and you just want to push forward, and that will also give you some different textures in your letters as well. So you can see I'm just pushing a little bit on these edges and bringing it in. You don't want to go too far, but that's another way to just vary up the style of texture that's coming in here, because that texturizer brush works really well, but we don't want it to all look like that one type of texture from that brush. I will also use my damp smudger, which has a little bit of a rougher look that kind of makes it look like watercolor paper texture. And if you want, the default brush for this equivalent would be in your charcoal set, either the charcoal block or the burnt tree. You would want to grab one of those. So with the damp smudger, I can come over and you'll see the difference pretty dramatically compared to our texturizer brush. Whoops, I want my smudge tool for this. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one just adds the look of paper texture on your letters versus, let me do it up here, maybe you'll see it better.
Yeah, beautiful. By the way, I keep forgetting to say on these sessions because I get so mesmerized, but for everyone watching, and I think this is going to be most of you, if you have your smartphone to hand and you have Instagram, film a bit of this and put it on your stories. And if you want to tag up Teela, she's at every Tuesday. And tag up Design Cuts. And if you want myself, I'm Tom Ross Media. And we'd love to kind of reshare your experience of learning along with us. It's always cool to see that in people's stories.
Totally.
Oh, speaking of the man himself, Stefan Kunz, he's stayed on to watch. He just said, that texture.
Aw, he's stuck in. I'm going to have to watch your replay.
He did great. Right. Honestly, it was an awesome session.
Awesome. I can't wait to see it. So we've got our selection still active, and now we can deselect it because we've added in all the texture that we need right here. And if we look in really closely, oh, actually, if we want to add in those darker edges, we have a lot of dark edges right now, so you can do this if you'd like. It's totally optional, but I'll show you how to do that in case you're wondering how. So I'm going to come over to my colors. I'm going to grab my green color. We're going to do the green first. So hop into your layers palette. You're going to create a new layer right above your color block lettering layer. And we're going to change the blend mode of this one to multiply and grab your round paintbrush for lettering or whatever brush you use for your lettering. And you're just going to come over to the edges. I'm going to reduce the size of this brush quite a bit. I'm down to like 9 or 10%. And I'm just going to hit the edges just slightly on these ones. And I also like hitting the curves on these ones because this is where you'd really see this happening in regular watercolor lettering. You want to make sure that the color that you're using is matching whatever letters color you have. So you don't want to go overboard. And I also steer clear of wherever I have a blend going on. So where the orange is mixing into the green, I don't want to put an edge like right here because it just won't look right. You want to keep it to wherever it's totally green.
Where I guess it would have dried more. There would have been less water exposure.
Yep, because obviously you want to have this dark green edge where you already have a blend of yellow to green. You'd have a yellow to green kind of edge.
Yeah.
So we just want it to look as realistic as possible.
By the way, Teela, I can see several people in the comments, including Matt, our creative director, are saying, this is ruining my productivity for the day. It's just too interesting to watch.
It's so fun to do. I just sit on the couch for hours making different things.
You're going to have people in trouble with their bosses at this rate, Teela.
Not sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
Exactly. All right, so you guys get the idea. I'm going to move to the next color now.
I just love your attention to detail, to be honest.
Oh, thank you. It makes all the difference. I'm obsessed with the little details. It's all about the little things, you know? All right. Okay, I'm going to just do a few spots of the blue just for consistency's sake. And these are all on the same layer with the blend mode, just because these are just really small details. You could separate them out onto their own layers if you wanted to, but they're so tiny that it's really fine to leave them on their own layer. I'm usually a huge stickler for separating your layers so you're working non-destructively, but for this, it's totally fine. All right.
You know what? It helps with the realism, but it also helps it jump off the page more.
Yes.
It's got like double benefit with this edging.
So in order to, you can leave it just like this with a harder edge, but I feel like it looks like it's blending into the base lettering a lot better if we just add a slight blur to it. So I'll come over to my magic wand over here and choose Gaussian Blur and then just up this slightly. So pay attention to the edge and watch that edge as you're moving it. You don't want to blow it out too much. You still want it to look nice and dark and heavy and rich there, but we just want it to blend a little bit so that softer edge really takes it to the next level. So that looks good.
Teela, quick question.
Yes.
Is this non-destructive, a lot of these techniques, or not?
For everything but putting all of these edges on the same layer and all the color blocks, usually I would put the color blocks on their own layers and then I would create a group of those color blocks for the individual letters that are different colors. I would put them into a group. So every color is on its own layer, put that in a group and then set it aside and kind of just turn off the visibility. That way I can go back to it later if I'd ever need to change anything. So normally I would put right here, all these different colors in a group. That way it's separated. So this is a little more destructive because we have to keep them all together. We would have to merge them anyway, just because in order to create a selection of the entire thing. Right now, you can't create a selection of a group, which you can do that in Photoshop, but you can't in Procreate. So that's why we have to merge them together.
Okay. Although give it time. I mean, Procreate are just innovating so quickly.
It's so true. It's just a matter of time. All right, so we're all done here. So all we have to do is deselect and we're going to add some final paint splatter for some finishing touches. So I deselected by just hitting that icon up here. And now we can zoom out without those annoying diagonal lines. We can kind of see how everything looks. We can look at all the darker edges here, all the texture that we put in there, the bleeding of the colors.
I love that.
We're just going to add in that splatter now, so we're going to create a layer on top. Normally I would label all of my layers as well, but for the sake of time, we're just going to cruise through this. So I like doing paint splatter with every color that I'm using in my palette or in my final outcome, but you don't want to go overboard because it just gets really crazy if you go too far. So I'll just grab my orange first, and I've got a couple of different splatter brushes right here. Splatter Bleed is my favorite one. The equivalent, if you're using default brushes, come into water, and it would be like your Mad Splashes or your Water Flicks, or you could even do the blotch if you want it. So I've got my Splatter Bleed.
By the way, I do hope for everyone tuned in live, if you haven't seen it, go and check out after this the competition that we're running, because we're giving away an iPad Pro. And the more I look at this, I'm hoping people are going to do their own version of this with their own wording and own colors. It would make such a perfect entry to the competition. So there's just a day or two left. But yeah, if you want to take what you've learned in any of these sessions, turn it into a competition entry, try and win that iPad.
Yeah, I would love to see them too. Please tag me. I love seeing watercolor work, especially on an iPad, just because a lot of people don't realize that it's so possible to do it. And it's really not that difficult either once you know the steps to follow. So I've got this new layer right at the top. The blend mode is multiply again, and I've got my splatter bleed selected. So I'm just going to hit it a few times, and you can change up the size too if you just want to vary that a little bit. And it's really easy to go overboard with these. So I always remind myself, like, scale it back, Teela.
I love this step as well. You're going to start putting like coffee rings on it soon as well.
I don't think so. I'll leave the coffee rings off of this one. But you could definitely do that. Make these a little bigger.
Do you ever do this and then frame it with a paintbrush from a scene creator pack or something like that?
I don't.
Okay, I'm getting carried away.
You could do that too. All right. So that is our final outcome. So that's how to create realistic and beautiful lettering, watercolor lettering, 100% in Procreate on an iPad.
That is amazing. Wow. Thank you, Teela.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible. I mean, I love the outcome when we started, but seeing how much went into it, it's just, that is the most authentic digital watercolor lettering that I've ever seen.
Oh, so, thank you.
Nice. So and everyone's loving it. Yeah, guys, let's show some love for Teela in the comments. You've been so positive throughout that session. Let's give it up for Teela, though.
Aw, thank you, guys.
Thank you for sharing. Are you ready for some Q&A then?
Yes, I will flip this monitor around.
Amazing. So remember, just underneath this live video, there's an Ask a Question feature. And if you pop your question in there, we're going to try and get through as many as we can before the end of this session. So I'm going to open them up now. Welcome back. Hello.
It's like I never left.
Yeah. So I'm just going to dive into the questions here, but thank you again. Everyone was like this. If you catch up on the chat afterwards, so many emojis being like, this is my face watching this.
Oh, I'm so glad. That makes me so happy. You guys are totally making my day.
First question, Teela, is from Eric, who says, I've been debating to get an iPad Pro, but is it too small? He's kind of debating a Wacom tablet as well. What do you think?
So I used to use Wacom tablets for a lot of my design work on the desktop, but the iPad Pro has completely replaced the Wacom entirely for me. I can't stress enough how amazing the iPad Pro is. I would go with that 100% because all the things that you use a Wacom for, you can now use your iPad for. The AstroPad app, I don't know if you've heard of it or if you're familiar with it. It's a mirroring app that you can use. I know that the next iOS is going to replace, or they've got their own feature now, but we're not sure. There's a lot of debate about how closely it's going to match all the capabilities of AstroPad, because AstroPad really has it down right now. So I use that app and it mirrors my screen, so I can draw directly on my iPad as if it's a Wacom Cintiq, and it's less than half the price that way. And then you get all the benefits of being able to have access to Procreate, which I use every day. So if this is something you love to do, if you love lettering, Procreate's where it's at these days. It's just, there's nothing like being able to draw and basically use Photoshop on your lap while you're watching TV and just drawing directly on screen.
It's pretty addictive as well, right? Even in my more limited use of Procreate, I just get lost in it. I'm scared to get an iPad and get Procreate because I will not get any work done.
Yeah, you will be giving up many, many hours, but it's amazing. It's one of the best decisions I've made for my creative career presently.
Love it. Noviana asks, do you have a screen protector on your iPad? And if so, do you think matte protector is preferred?
I actually don't. I've always drawn directly on the glass and I've loved it that way. I've read so many different reviews. There's just so many out there to choose from. And I just didn't want to take the chance on something that I didn't feel like I needed, because I've been so happy with just drawing directly on the glass. Why spend the extra money or dealing with issues that I don't need to run into, you know? So I don't use one personally.
Love it. What is the best advice for a newbie in watercolor and lettering that you wish you knew earlier? Grieth asks.
For traditional watercolor lettering?
I guess
or
either.
Digital?
Yeah, let's maybe go with digital.
Okay, so you don't necessarily need to know how to do it traditionally if you decide to do it digitally. If you have no experience doing it traditionally, I would just take the time and really look at traditionally created watercolor lettering pieces and make notes of all the details, the things that you see in common with the styles that you really like, so you can replicate it digitally. If you have done it before traditionally, then you kind of have a leg up just because you're already familiar with what things are going to look like, how water moves, just traditionally within your lettering and how it pushes color to the sides. So you kind of have a leg up on that. So if you're interested in traditional watercolor lettering, I would grab some watercolors, draw some out, and just look at it and see what you like, what you don't like, what you want to improve, and then implement that within your digital watercolor lettering, and it will really take it to the next level.
Love it. Angela says, Teela, how would you export and print this beautiful artwork that you've created?
Oh man, that's next week's tutorial.
Oh, no. Well, you could maybe give us the bullet points if that's allowed.
So you want to export it. So you'll hit the wrench icon, you'll hit share, and I export as a PSD. That way I maintain all of my layers, and I actually bring it onto the computer in Photoshop. You could print it directly how you have it, but there's so many ways to improve it and work with whatever printer paper that you're using to really utilize and take advantage of your printer's capabilities and the capabilities of the substrate that you're printing it on. So I recommend bringing it into Photoshop because then you can really experiment and saturate some colors or some areas that maybe you wouldn't have been able to do if you just printed it directly from the iPad. So I bring it into Photoshop and do some tweaks there. And next Tuesday's tutorial, I'm going to show exactly how to do that.
I love it. Angela, I don't know if you saw Teela in the comments. She said, oh, no, don't answer the question. I'm so sorry.
Angela.
Teela's always going to answer the question. She's like the most generous teacher. So. Dallas asks, do you think it's important to go to school for graphic design or design in general to get to your level?
I actually get asked this pretty often. And back when I graduated in 2008, where the resources online were nowhere near what they are today. So back then I would say it's probably a good idea to do at least a 2-year school. Now I would say you can learn 100% online. You just have to be very, very dedicated. Some people need to feel like they need to show up to a place in order to learn everything, and other people are just so driven that they're going to spend hours upon hours every week, every day honing their craft. If you're one of those people and you know that you can dedicate the time needed to improve your craft, then you can definitely do it online 100%. I would say I got some good foundations from my 4-year school, but everything I do today is self-taught things that I used my base knowledge and just went off and experimented from there and taught myself new things, new processes, new techniques. So everything I'm doing today, I use very little of what I learned in school, just because the technology has changed so much. And now we have just amazing resources online to take advantage of too.
I completely agree. And, on our podcast, The Honest Designers Show, I would say it's like 50-50 split. And we have incredibly successful people on. So you can be very successful with it. You can be very successful without it. If you haven't been to school, don't let that hold you back at all. For
sure. You can totally do it.
Jody asked, do you have a tutorial on how to create your watercolor paper texture?
So what I did is I grabbed some of my traditional watercolor paper that I have because I used to letter with watercolors all the time. It's one of my favorite things still to do. So I have a bunch of different watercolor paper. I actually scanned it in, improved the resolution. I improved different parts of it in Photoshop, and then I just exported it as JPEGs and I airdropped it onto my iPad. So I didn't create those from scratch. They're just scanned in. They're real watercolor paper.
Perfect. And Heidi asks, I'd love to hear your process in choosing color palettes. I love this question because so many people, myself included, struggle with color. I feel like it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, so a lot of the times I will look on Pinterest and find, Pinterest has a bunch of just regular color palettes that people can pull and use. And I like to customize my palettes. So I don't like doing that because I don't want it to be too close to other people's palettes. So I will look at photography that I really like, the color palette. I'll take a screenshot of that. I will eyedropper it on the iPad in Procreate, and then I will adjust those colors after that to make sure they fit together really well. Adobe Color is also a really nice resource, that website for finding color palettes. I used to use that one a lot, but now with Pinterest, I really like my process of finding photography that I really like and then borrowing from there, because I feel like it's much more custom than any default palettes that other people put together.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And when you use a pre-existing palette, you don't know if that's going to start becoming really popular. And suddenly you see it everywhere and you're like, oh no, I used that for my whole brand. And now it's become really generic.
Yeah, totally.
Justin asks, what are your thoughts on Adobe Fresco?
I've only played with it a little bit so far. I used to play with Adobe Sketch just because the watercolor look was really cool. And Adobe Fresco has that down better than any other programs at the moment. I don't love their interface. It's much more intuitive on Procreate for me personally. I mean, I'm sure they will improve that as time goes on. It's still very new. I think I need to spend a little more time with it before I can give you my true opinion, but first impression wise, I like the interface of Procreate better. Maybe it's because I'm already familiar with it and it's more natural because I was a Photoshop user before Procreate. But yeah, I think there's a place for either of them, the way that their watercolor is behaving, but who's to say that Procreate's not going to do that as well? And people, I've read a lot of comments about people being upset about what Adobe's going to charge for Fresco too, whereas Procreate's your one-time fee. So that's a gigantic advantage with Procreate.
I think Procreate is just the best valued thing in the world.
I can't believe it's not subscription. It blows my mind that it's a one-time, and it's so cheap too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even expensive, and they're so good at like updating it and just making it better than ever. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely a fanboy over here. So Marie asks, how do you add color swatches in Procreate? I don't know.
Oh,
is this something you can
I can download that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let me just
thanks so
switch
much.
This around.
Look at this, consummate professionals. We're switching it up camera to camera.
Oh. All right. So your color palettes are right here. All of your palettes are right here. I have like, I don't know, hundreds of palettes. I have a lot. So this is where you're going to put all of your palettes. And when you create a new palette, you're just going to hit this plus right here, and a new blank palette will appear above whatever palette you had previously selected. So this is my new palette, and then I can bring it over to the disk right here. So I can just tap on the disk, and then I can adjust this color wheel. You can see it in different ways too. This is the classic one, so you can adjust the color this way and grab if you want a shade or a tone of your color, you can do that. You can put in individual values right here. So I like sticking with the disk. It's just a lot easier for me to use. So you can find the color that you want. And then when you're happy with the color, you just tap down here and that will put the color in there. So you can add all of your colors. If you hate a color that you added here, all you have to do is tap and hold, and you'll get the option to delete it. And you can rearrange that too. So I can just tap and hold and drag, so you can rearrange your little colors. If you want to label them, you just tap up here and then you can label it. Label. So that's how easy it is to make a color palette.
Love it. And just while we've got this open, Tammy was asking, are you constantly working with the selection active?
I do that a lot. I switch between, sometimes it's smarter for me to use masking, layer masking, and other times it's much quicker to use a selection. It all depends on what the project entails, how complex it is. But yeah, selection is really, really easy to use for this specific technique. There are other ones where I would add a mask instead.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm loving some of the chat and the comments as well, because a lot of people are talking about Adobe and how expensive it is, and that they're enjoying seeing some of the breakthrough options. And it's exactly why we've embraced the Procreate section and an Affinity section on our marketplace, because personally, I actually love to try and support these softwares that are really, really great, and actually giving different options for people that maybe can't afford the Creative Cloud every single month.
Yep, totally.
So we've got a random question here, but I like it, from Jay, just saying, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, Teela?
Lately I've been, that's awesome. Lately I've been into, there's a brand of frozen yogurt that's black raspberry, and I'm really digging that. I actually have one of those like every day.
That sounds amazing. Well, hold on, we're just joining face to face again.
Back.
We're back. This is a great question, actually, from Eva, saying, what are the best tools to make your own brushes if you're a newbie? And I've seen a little bit about how to make Procreate brushes, but I'd love your take on it.
Sure. I actually have a full video on YouTube. I did it like maybe a month ago. It's fairly new. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see it there. But essentially what I do is I take regular utensils that I have, writing utensils, and I will make little dots on a sheet of paper and do little doodles on a sheet of paper, and then I'll scan those in. I'll bring them into Photoshop, I'll clean it up, and then you have to invert the selection. So instead of being black, it has to be white when you bring it into Procreate, and then you can do all of your settings. But I have a full video. It walks you through from me creating it on the sheet of paper, scanning it in, my settings, how I invert the selection in Photoshop, and then how I bring it onto the iPad, and all of my settings that I adjust when I'm creating lettering brushes in Procreate. So it's very, very comprehensive. It'll cover everything that you're looking for.
Perfect. And definitely recommend checking out Teela's YouTube. It is a treasure trove. And that's just every Tuesday, isn't it, Teela? On YouTube.
It's youtube.com/every2s. There's no day at the end of it. So every Tues.
Perfect. Mei Ling asks, how much time do you recommend practicing each day on iPad to get better at it?
I would say at least an hour a day. That will really take your skills to the, wherever you want them to go. An hour minimum, I would say. I'm on it probably 2 or 3 hours at least a day. So you just learn so much.
Does it have the thing our phones have where it tells you? That's always depressing.
I haven't looked. It's probably way worse than that. I'm probably lowballing, so it sounds like I still have a life. But
I bet it is. Are you as guilty as I am, where your partner calls you and it's like, just 5 minutes, I'll be there, and then an hour later, you've just got lost in the rabbit hole?
It's so funny you say that, because last night I was preparing for this, and he said, "How much longer are you going to be?" Because it was already midnight, and I was like, 20 minutes. So I didn't go to bed until like 1:30, just because I was like so wrapped up. I was like, "Oh, I can teach them this too. I need to remember to do this." So yeah.
My fiance now has the expression "a Tom 5 minutes." Which is definitely not 5 minutes.
Yeah, 50 minutes later.
James asks, hello, who is your support when bouncing off feedback? So I guess he's asking, like, who do you go to get feedback on your work, if you go to anyone?
My husband is amazing for that, because he's also a designer. He's now a developer, but he was a designer first, and he has a really, really great eye. And I like that. I work on something and I don't show him at all, and then when I'm finished, I'll show it to him. And he's kind and he's honest, which is ideal when you're looking for someone that's going to give you constructive feedback. I never feel offended by his criticism, and his criticism always helps take my work where I want it to go. So my husband is it for me. I show him everything I do, and his feedback is the most valuable to me. And I always adjust per his eye.
Love it. This is just another reason why you and Spencer are couple goals.
Thank you.
Teela, do you back up your brushes before you update Procreate? Angela asks.
I definitely should. I don't, and I shouldn't admit that. But the next update, I for sure am going to do it, because I have so many more now than I had at the last update. So yes, 100%, I will do it this time.
I bet. And Nicole's asking, Teela, are you on Skillshare? We actually have Angela who says, yes, you are. You've got a lot of courses on Skillshare.
I do.
But also,
I think I've got, yeah.
On your website, you've got a ton as well, don't you?
Yes. Yep. So I offer really super in-depth courses if you want to deep dive into certain topics on my website. And if you're just looking to get your feet wet with different topics, I've got courses on Skillshare for that. So it really depends on whatever you're looking for.
Love it. And final question. I'm going to hog the mic on this one, Teela. This is kind of me selfishly wanting to know, but I am not really a Procreate user yet. As I say, I occasionally dabble, but if I'm looking to get into it, where should I start? Because it seems overwhelming. There's so many different things to learn and try and different styles of work. Like, how should I break into using it?
So you're already a Photoshop user, so it would be super natural for you to jump into it. For hand letters, just because that's the crowd that I can really speak to. When I first got my iPad, I got the first iPad Pro when it first came out, and I remember playing around with it for the first time. And my biggest recommendation would just be play. You know, grab some brushes, because there's tons of default brushes, and just play around. Especially if you're familiar with what Photoshop is capable of, try doing some of those same things in Procreate. If you get stuck or wonder how to do something, there's so many YouTube tutorials now. It's a treasure trove just on YouTube with looking up whatever you want to do with it. So I would just sit down and play. And you'll learn the interface really well when you're playing around. You'll learn how brushes operate really well, and you'll be able to experiment with all the things that you want to make.
Love that. Thank you very much. Well, you never know. Hopefully we'll have you back next year and I'll be a proficient Procreate user by that point. Teela, thank you for being so incredibly generous and giving of your time and expertise. As always, you really over-delivered. We really appreciate you jumping on with us today. Once again, in the comments, guys, let's give it up for Teela. But Teela, what is the best places, I guess, to find you? Because you are kind of everywhere.
So the main place would be my website, every-tuesday.com, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/everytues. And then if you're on Instagram, my handle's everytuesday, one word.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for joining us today. You're an absolute star, and we would love to have you back next year because we're going to do it bigger and better in 2020.
Sounds good.
Amazing. Thank you, Teela. Chat to you soon.
Thank you. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys, we hope you enjoyed the second session today. That was a ton of fun. Thank you for being so positive and so active in the comments, of course. In about 10 minutes, we have our third session this Tuesday, and we're going to be joined by the wonderfully talented Debbie Sementelli and Laura Worthington. So they're going to be teaming up to teach you all about fonts and typography. You're actually going to learn the steps of how you might actually turn your lettering into a font, potentially make money from it, which is going to be incredible. So do hop on over. I know our team have just popped a link in the chat, but if you click on that, pop over and register. And it's just back to back today, guys. It's a ton of fun. We're really enjoying it. We hope you are too. And we hope you're enjoying the wider event. If you haven't grabbed them yet, we're rerunning all our best bundles from the past 6 years. You can get unbelievably good quality resources for up to 99% off. We've got exclusive products. We've got the iPad Pro giveaway, which you should definitely get involved in before time is up on that. There's a ton of stuff happening. I will see you guys in about 10 minutes on the next session. So hop on over. We'll see you shortly. Bye.